With Loftus heaving, Glasgow overcame the altitude and a 13-point deficit to lift the URC trophy. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. Absolutely fantastic final. What a competition this is. The URC is just amazing. It keeps delivering this season all the way through, and the final was no different than what we've seen pretty much from round one. It's, it really has, I feel, taken a massive step forward as a competition this year. Huge congratulations to Glasgow and their fans, and also honestly to the Bulls and their fans as well, because they played their part in what was an epic final, and so unlucky for them. 2 final defeats in 3 years, and just can't quite get their hands on that trophy. But you know what? It's coming. They're gonna win it. Someday, maybe it's gonna be next season, and that's the hope for rugby fans all the time, right? Maybe it's going to be next season for Glasgow. It's their season this year. Okay, so absolutely great atmosphere at Loftus. So huge, huge kudos and fair play to the Bulls fans, and also fans of other South African teams as well, because I know the Bulls did this promotion where they encourage fans of other franchises to come and wear their shirts as well, like Lions, Sharks, or Stormer shirts, or even just the Springbok shirts, and come along and support. And they did that, and that was brilliant to see. So they really played a big part in the occasion today, and I think it's one of the reasons why I talked about before. We're not really ready for having predetermined venues for finals in the URC, because at the moment we need that kind of home support to fill the stadium and to bring the crowds. I don't think if this final had been played over in Italy or in Ireland or Wales, we would have got as big a crowd as we did at this one. Someday we will be able to, we'll be able to say, okay, this year the final is wherever, and if it means that potentially 2 teams have to travel out to South Africa to play a final, the competition will be big enough that the stadium will be sold out. But certainly not at that level at the moment. But you can see it's building, and that's always brilliant to see. So into the game, pretty much just after the kickoff, not releasing the tackle from Dempsey, and Houston, very early shot at goal. He slots that to make it 3-0 to the Bulls. Glasgow then go up the line from a penalty after Nortia wasn't rolling away, but the throw is crooked, and you're beginning to think, is the Glasgow line out going to wobble a little bit in this game? Bulls also getting up there, disrupting, making that making it difficult for Glasgow to get clean ball from the line out in the early stages. Glasgow did kind of sort it out a little bit later on in the game, though, and Bulls' first scrum looks like they're on top. Really did bring the power. They win a penalty, but then afterwards, Glasgow kind of got a little bit of parity. There were times when they were still under pressure, and you could see that the Bulls were definitely the better team in the scrum, but crucially, I think for Glasgow, it didn't turn into a position where every time there's a penalty or a scrum, they were conceding penalties. They were able to get ball out, sometimes scrappily from their own feet, and sometimes they were able to kind of hold it solid as well. Bulls then, from an early penalty, they go up the line, then they go off the top for the line out, they get it wide, and Peterson puts in a kick that then forces Glasgow to step out close to their own line, and now it's a 5-meter line out, or close enough. Bulls, they kind of force back a bit, but then they work it back within 5 meters, and they're forcing penalties from Glasgow. Glasgow, for a lot of that first half, maybe the first 30 minutes or so, under a lot of pressure in their own half, conceding penalties.
and we come back for penalty after advantage, and Houston doubles the lead to 6 points to 0 for the Bulls. We then see something that's kind of rare. Papier gets blown for not using the ball after 5 seconds, and it's nice to see. I'd love to see all referees doing it and doing it consistently as well. That's the main thing. Is that you can't just say it once and give it. You have to be consistent in terms of after you say it, how long is it until you actually give give the scrum or whatever. So Glasgow scrum in that Bulls 22, and they're steadier in the scrum in this one. They spread it, then go through some phases, but Glasgow basically passed the ball to no one, and then the Bulls break. Glasgow do well, I think, to scramble back, and they prevent a try and force a knock on as well. Bulls then continuing to put pressure on Glasgow. Fagerson gives away a couple of penalties, collapsing them all as well, and Glasgow get a warning for their discipline at this stage. I'm thinking maybe if they're under a bit more pressure, somebody's going to go to the bin, and then Bulls from penalty to go to the corner, and Hanekom works it up to the line, and then a couple of phases later we have a TMO check for a possible try. Wilco Lowe, first of all, check for a double movement. It's fine. His knees are off the ground, so that's not a problem. But there's no clear grounding, and the on-field decision is no try, and there's a suspicion that Darge has held it up anyway. So we come back for that. They decide it was held up. Goal line dropout. Great defence from Glasgow, but it's still at this stage one-way traffic, and you can only hold out for so long really in this position. Here then, Bulls back to the corner from another penalty, set up the maul. Initially, it's driven back a little bit, but it's a bit of a dummy maul as well. So they're kind of like 5 meters out, but by the time they actually go off the back through Marco van Staden, they're maybe about 8 meters out instead. And he first of all shrugs off the tackle of Darge, then goes through the tackle of Cancellieri and has another couple of Glasgow players hanging onto him as well as he goes over the line. And I thought he did really well after the tackle from Darge, where he kind of stumbled a little bit and he had the presence of mind to place the ball, get back to his feet quickly, and go again, so that he wasn't caught out for basically playing the ball on the ground, but by coming back up, and then he scores the try. Houston converts it, and 13-0, a very healthy lead in a final. Both teams at this stage competing at the breakdown. You can see they're both going over for those turnovers and trying to slow down the opposition ball, and both are having some success at that as well. Bulls now on the attack, but Cancellieri, he intercepts a Papier pass just right in there in the passing channel. He breaks into the 22 on the right. Glasgow then recycle it to go left. Kyle Steyn rides a couple of tackles. Looks like, for all the world, that he's going over to score. And then I'm pretty sure it was Creel, and I think maybe was Hrobler in there as well to help him. But definitely Creel in there with a try saver, dislodges the ball, and they're able to clear. But now Glasgow come back and they work it in again. But Grobler this time, he gets over the ball and wins that penalty. I thought he was very good he's been very good all season, but he's very good in this one as well. Very strong over the ball and making sure that he gets that lift to get the penalty. Bulls then break from row 22. Devin Williams, he finds a gap, carries it over halfway line. They can't quite, it looks like they're in behind, but they can't quite get the ball, to hand and to the space. And Glasgow eventually managed to turn it over. Clock ticks into red with Glasgow, putting pressure on in the Bulls 22, and they work it close up to the line after a line out, and it feels like a massive moment in the game, because if the Bulls can keep them out, then you feel like they've got one hand on the trophy with a 13-0 lead at half time. But Cummings picks and goes to the back of a ruck and he drives over to score. And in the build up to that as well, there was some fantastic carries from both Dempsey and Matt Fagerson, especially. And Horn converts that one 13 points to 7. And it feels like there's some hope there for Glasgow now. You would have kind of worried for them if they had been denied there, because not only would have been a bigger kind of mountain to climb for them, starting second half 13 points down, but also just the mental thing of having exerted themselves right at the end there and not gotten over, and then the boost to the Bulls in the opposite side of being able to hold them out. But it was Glasgow that got over, and that boost to them carried into the second half as well. They win a penalty early in that second half. They go up the line into the 22. Maul makes good ground, and then they break up to within 5 meters, but then Roblar gets over the ball again and wins a crucial penalty for the Bulls, trying to stem that momentum that Glasgow are building. Bulls then lose Hanekom to injury as he limps off. He had some good moments in the game, not as impactful as he was in the semi-final, but that was just an outstanding display in that semi-final. But still, a really good player, missing probably, certainly earlier than they would have taken him off otherwise. We then have a bit of kicking contest, and Houston comes out on top. Jordan shanks a clearance kick to, as usual, you expect it from any home crowd, right? Big cheer from the crowd when it comes off the outside of his boot unintentionally. Bulls then work it in field. They force penalty advantage. Houston attempts to drop goal. It's scruffy and it's wide, but we come back for that penalty, and he makes it 16-7 from the tee. And it feels like the Bulls are starting to establish maybe a little bit more control in the game. But then Elric Lowe, he knocks on the restart, picked up by Aronset, penalty to Glasgow, and they decide to go to the corner. And it was a really costly error at that restart. And a lot of teams with like that, you just scored. You need to manage your restart and not give the easy points back to the opposition when you just worked for points yourself. Glasgow set up the ball. Bulls initially defended well, but then Glasgow, they shear just some backs joining in, and then they shear off, and the front of the mall basically takes the Bulls' mall defense with it, and then the rest, and they've got momentum, and over they go. Like the remaining Bulls defenders that come in to try and stop them just can't halt that momentum. And Turner just on from Matthews, he is the scorer. Horn converts 16-14, and now it's Glasgow coming back with that momentum, and they're just one score back at this stage, and Bulls fans must be getting a bit nervy having had such a decent lead. Then Mackay claims a restart. He breaks up the middle, and then he's kind of in behind, but just two defenders back there, so he doesn't feel like he can back himself. And from about half, it wasn't even halfway. It was in his own half. He decides to put a kick in and then go on the chase, but overcooks the kick, kicks the ball dead, and it's a scrum all the way back for the Bulls. And at that stage, the game, you feel it can go either way, and a little mistake like that can just completely destroy your team's momentum and just hand it to the opposition. From here then, we have Glasgow, though. They win the penalty at the scrum. I told you that they improved their scrum through the game, and now I think at this stage we definitely had replacements in the front row. I think maybe for both teams, and tipped it a little bit in Glasgow's favour, but it's certainly only like Bulls were still strong in the scrum though, and from that now Glasgow are kicking up the line. Where in the first half we would have thought Bulls have a scrum, maybe they're going to win the penalty and kick up the line instead. Then Glasgow go to the Maul. Maul makes good ground, but then there's an aggressive Bulls defence comes in that drives them back as they look to spread the ball. Matt Fagerson then gets pinged for a neck roll, and penalty for Bulls, and they can clear. Glasgow then they attack off a line out around about halfway. And this one came from because Aronson pinged for playing the man in the air. It's one of those ones where he's coming in under the player, jumping for the ball, and he's not really competing, which can be fairly dangerous. It was this one was a little bit innocuous, but it's definitely still a penalty. So Glasgow then work it wide to Stain, as they go off the top on the line out, and he gets to within 5 meters. They go back inside then, hands under pressure as they go wide again, with that Bulls defence pressing them all the time. Stain then pops the ball back inside for Hugh Jones to go over. Horn converts 21 points to 16, and now Glasgow are in the lead. Bulls, they come on attack round about halfway. They're not really finding much penetration, and Papier gets his hands free, looking for an offload to try and potentially put someone through a gap, or at least get some proper momentum for them. But the ball goes loose. Dempsey picks it up and he gallops over from halfway. And it looks like at this point maybe that is game over, but we're called back for Timo check. The reason why he was able to do that because Turner took Aronson off the ball, and he was the person that Papier was trying to offload the ball to, and that's why it didn't go to hand. Back we come for the penalty. Bulls go up the line, works the edge of the 2022, but then Aronson now gets whistled for a neck roll. Ludwig then takes Horn out in the air, and Horn decides he's going to kick for the post, but even with altitude, he doesn't have the distance and it falls short. Then now it's the Bulls. Van Staden gets over the ball, wins a penalty for them, trying to give them some kind of platform. Husen, I don't know why, but he decides to go quickly from the kick. There was, to my mind, no real need for it, and gets the kick completely wrong, and it runs dead. It's a scrum back for Glasgow, and you're thinking, your team are, they need to score, but you have the time and you have a great platform there. Go up the line and then work it from there. Be in the Glasgow half, but a big mistake from him. Sorry, at that stage. Bulls then they have to go from their own half. They do get some momentum as they get the offload game going. Glasgow though get over the ball for a penalty, but we do have a pause for a TMO check. And first of all, they actually showed the wrong tackle twice, and you hear a lot of boos from the crowd because it's something that personally I don't like, but you absolutely understand that if you're in the crowd for your team and there's a check on the thing, whatever is happening on the screen, you're booing to try and influence the referee, right? And even though it was the wrong tackle, the, they're booing and they're basically doing their job as far as I'm concerned. But then we do get the right tackle this time, and we can see that it's from Tom Jordan on Clopper, and he's he's hit him high, and it's definitely like head contact, and so seems like Piardi is going to go red. He's talking about where he doesn't feel like there's a high degree of of danger upright in the tackle, and he's not personally not seeing much you know much mitigation. But then Timo Liparini comes in. He mentions the how much force there was, and most of the force going through the body, etc. So then that kind of sways Piardi a little bit, who decides he's going to go for yellow. But either way, Glasgow are down to 14 for the rest of regular time. I think probably in the end, they probably got to the right decision with the fact that the force went through the body first and up. But it's one of those. It's kind of most of the most of the cards, I have to say, in the URC this year in the matches that I've seen, I've agreed with, and it's been, for me at least, fairly clear cut. Just because I watch so much of it, and I can see how the referees are arriving at these decisions. This one was a bit closer, I felt, in terms of it was right on that cusp of potentially being a red card. From here, then the Bulls decide to go up the line from the penalty just outside the 22. Glasgow, um, first of all, they halt them all, and Bulls, they need to move the ball. Then Turner thinks he's actually stolen the ball, but he was off his feet. So Huson has a penalty. He kicks that to the corner, and Bulls basically right at the death now that they've got a chance to potentially get that score that will either tie it up, or if they convert it as well, will actually win them the trophy. They go to the mall for the line out, but it goes to ground. Cummings gets pinged for collapsing. Bulls then go back to the corner from the penalty, and first of all, they start driving forward. Glasgow then have a second wave of defenders. Some of the Bulls players on the far side of the camera look like they're over the line, but crucially, the ball isn't with them; it's actually with, and the ball gets held up. It's unplayable, short of the line, and that is the end of the game. Full time, Glasgow are URC champions, and just drama all the way through in this game. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and everybody played a great part in it as well. And I'm sure Bulls fans are going to be disappointed, but I think you should be proud of the effort of your team. First of all, to get to the final and how close they came to winning as well. I don't think there are, I don't think anyone really who was on that field today should be kind of holding their head in shame. I thought all the way around, everybody was excellent. That was out there. Yeah, some players made mistakes, etc. But I'm talking about kind of all around contribution to things. And unfortunately, there are some players who may get blamed for certain contributions or whatever at crucial times. But in close games, that's what happens. So we are going to have a look at the stats from the game, and then we'll briefly talk about both teams as well. So first up, try scored, 1 for the Bulls and 3 for the Warriors. And, that stat, I think, obviously very crucial in terms of the scoreline for 2 reasons. One is that the Bulls, when they're on top there in that first half, they got held up once. They had other chances as well to get over and score. And maybe if they had done that, if they hadn't got to 2 or 3 tries in the game, it probably would have been too much for the Warriors in the end to actually come back from. But you've got to give huge credit to the Warriors' defense there. And then also, Glasgow getting over for the first of those 3 tries that they scored right on the stroke of half time. It takes a lot of mental fortitude to be able to do that, because Glasgow, they've been in that position before, and a lot of times they come up short, but today they absolutely delivered. And that talked about it where I talked about actually before the start of the knockouts, where it felt like in previous years Glasgow very much struggled in the knockout stages for actual confidence, and the fact that they were saying the right things but not doing the right things. But here and in the other knockout stages, quarterfinal and semi-final as well, they absolutely backed up their words and delivered. And it felt like mentally they'd made a huge step forward this season. Next, they have possession 51 to 49, so very close on that. Clean breaks, just 3 for the Bulls and 8 for Glasgow. And and that's one thing with with the Bulls this week. I thought the Glasgow marshalled them certainly better in terms of broken field, etc. Defenders beaten 12 for the Bulls, 37 for Glasgow is absolutely massive. But it just shows as well, with even though the Bulls did concede 3 tries, there was a lot of really good scramble from the Bulls as well to prevent those beaten defenders or breaks from Glasgow from turning into scores at points where the Bulls were still trying to maintain control of the game. Offloads then 9 from the Bulls and 4 from the Warriors. On defense, territory 46% to 54. So Glasgow really turned it around in the second half because they spent most of the first 20 odd minutes in around their own 22, but in the second half and towards the end of that first half as well, they were able to press more in the Bulls half and in the Bulls 22 as well. Number of tackles 135 to 99. Missed tackles 37 from the Bulls, just 12 for Glasgow. Tackle success 78% for the Bulls. Certainly won't be happy with that. Always talk about you got to be somewhere around 86, 87% as kind of passable for the URC. So 78 is well below what the Bulls are generally producing and what they're capable of. 89% from Glasgow is definitely, especially for a final, is a really good return for them. Turnovers won then. 7 for the Bulls and 4 for Glasgow, and for both sides there were crucial turnovers at times where you felt like if their team wins, then that could be one of the moments that actually contributes to that. Kicks retained 1 each. I think in terms of kicking, it was more kind of the penalties that came from the kicks rather than the kicks themselves that really had an effect on the game, and then like errors from kicks as well. Penalties conceded then 7 from the Bulls, 13 from Glasgow, and again there was that period in the first half where Glasgow were conceding a lot of penalties, and they got a warning, and it could have led to a yellow card for them as well. If the Bulls had kind of forced another couple of penalties, it felt like they were maybe one extra penalty away during that period from somebody going to the bin. On to individual players then. Top scorer in the game was Hussen with 11 points. And then successful carries, Marco van Staden with 4, including just that monster one that he did for his try as well. Just absolutely brilliant. Jack Dempsey for Warriors, also outstanding in the carry. Clean breaks, 1 for Papier, 2 for Kyle Stain. Defenders beaten. Van Staden beat 3. I'm pretty sure he beat all 3 of them, or it felt like at least in scoring his try. Josh Mackay then with 8. His kick returns, we talked about it in the build-up, and he did it again today. He created a lot of breaks for Glasgow with those kick returns. Just so good at scanning and knowing where the space is even before he's actually collected the ball. Meters made then. Elric Lowe with 39 from the Bulls, and Jack Dempsey 112 for the Warriors, which is an outstanding number when you think about how many meters Mackay made, with his kick returns, and Jack Dempsey is outdoing him, like carrying in tighter areas as well. So absolutely brilliant from him. Offloads then 3 for Hussen and 2 for Matt Ferguson, who we thought had an absolutely brilliant game. The whole back row went well, but it's not like the Bulls back row were terrible. The Bulls back row were right up there as well. As it's just one of those ones where sometimes players, when it's a tight game like this, right? Because remember, the Bulls could potentially have gotten over at the end and won the game, right? That's how close it was. But sometimes you get players saying, or sorry, fans or pundits saying, "Oh, this guy wasn't very good, or that guy wasn't very good," and they're really basing that on the scoreline rather than the performance of the player. Where let's say some of the Bulls players did get criticised, right? But if the Bulls had got over at the end, those same players may have been like hoisted up on pedestals. that's how sometimes it happens. But I thought from both teams, there were just so many outstanding performances, and you could see both teams wanted that trophy, and unfortunately there has to be a loser, but it doesn't mean that the losers necessarily played played badly. It's just that they were outdone a little bit more, from their opposition. Number of tackles then, and look at this, Johan Grobler, 17. Absolutely brilliant shift. Matt Fagerson, 15 for the Warriors. Turnovers then, Grobler with 2 and Kyle Stein with 2 as well. So Grobler putting in a massive shift to his team. And let's talk about each of the teams. So the Bulls, they timed a run in the URC, and they've done it now, I think 3 years in a row, where they come into the form right for the playoffs, and they got to their second final. They gave it absolutely everything. They built that 13-point lead, and it just felt like in the second half they needed to just, if they kept that scoreboard ticking over, then maybe they would have had the trophy. That's how close they were, and it's it's the whole thing with a final, is that it's being able to produce those, whatever you've done before, producing those scores in the last quarter of the game that will potentially just lift you away. They weren't able to do that today, but you've got to give credit to the Warriors for that as well. But Bulls, scrum was excellent. They really disrupted the line out. They, at times definitely struggled with the Glasgow maul, their own maul. They didn't, get going as well as they certainly would have hoped to. So we talked about that battle of the maul. I felt like Glasgow definitely won that today. But then Bulls hugely competitive at the breakdown, and certainly I think the better of the teams in terms of getting those turnovers at the breakdowns as well, and some very crucial areas near their own line, etc., and also killing some what looked like certain for the Warriors, especially that Kyle Stein one when he got through. And kicking game, I don't think it certainly wasn't as good as we saw against Leinster, and maybe Willie LaRue being out was probably a big factor in that, because he was a big part of why they kicked so well against Leinster. So he was definitely a big miss for them today. Curtly Arnson, though, was definitely dangerous. During the game, thought Peterson was a little bit quieter than he was in the semi-final, but like Hanekom, he was, just absolutely exceptional in that semi-final, and set such a high bar as well to be able to get to it, a second week running for the Warriors. Then, early on, probably would have been a little bit worried, because line out not straight, then not clean ball when they did win their own line out. They're conceding early penalty in the scrum, conceding penalties at the breakdown as well, and that pressure is coming on from the Bulls. But brilliant defense, to basically keep the score down. Yes, they conceded 13 points, but it could have been a whole lot worse, and the game could have been over in that first kind of 30 minutes of the half. But then they start working their way back into the game. And crucially, they had, the wherewithal to get over for the score just before halftime. I think that's whatever happened in the second half. I think that's really where the game was won, because I think if the Bulls had kept them to nil at halftime, Glasgow maybe would have come back with a few scores in the second half, but it probably wouldn't have been enough to get over on top of the Bulls. And they probably wouldn't have had that momentum coming in to the second half as well to carry them on. And Bulls obviously would have been energized from the fact that they kept them out at half time. But then they did go for that score, and then second half, then there was no panic about them in terms of when the Bulls pulled ahead again, with the penalty, around about 51 minutes. Warriors respond with a try and suddenly make it a 2-point game. And now you can see that the Bulls are looking nervous, and Warriors were able to bring it through. As I said, I thought both, you know, both packs, but certainly, especially, I think the back rows were exceptional today. And we saw at times with Glasgow as well that centre pairing doing well, but the Bulls centres as well at times, especially on defence, kind of killed some of those moves as well that maybe Glasgow would have pulled off against other teams. But Glasgow now they're the champions, and it feels like it's been a long road for these guys because they've been on that radar, like certainly since it became the URC. They would have been one of the teams where at the start of the season you'd say they're definitely going to be in the mix. But then they get to knockout stages and wouldn't deliver. They absolutely delivered this year, and a lot of credit has to go to Smith and his team in terms of preparing them for this final, but also for the players as well. The way they were able to turn the defeats from other seasons into success this season as well. It takes a lot for players to be able to grow like that, not just individually but as a team as well. But again, the Bulls, they're not done as a force in this URC. Um, they're going to be a tough hurdle for anyone, and it feels like it will come for them eventually. Again, it could be next year, it could be 5 years down the line. We don't know, but it does feel like the Bulls are definitely going to be able to get their hands on that trophy. It's just a matter of when, really. But yeah, Glasgow, all the celebrations for them, and as I promised, it means that I'm now going to go and over the summer find myself a Glasgow shirt, and then I'm going to be able to wear that in my videos when I cover the Warriors next year as well. And now I know what I need to request for my birthday present this year is a nice little bull shirt as well.